Hey all you cats and chicks out there, welcome back to Control Players Unite. I'm your host, Dr. Red. Today we will be reviewing all of the tank cards in the current standard format. A tank Pokemon is one difficult to KO due to high HP, though there is not an official number. One might consider 300 HP as a good starting point, as 280 is the unofficial number one aims for in a one-hit knockout. Qualities of tank Pokemon in general, regardless of HP, are DP, or damage prevention, and HP+, which means to increase one's own HP or that of other Pokemon. There are also trainers and energy that aid Pokemon to this end. We will be including any and all cards that fulfill either of these qualities. We are purposefully excluding any high HP Pokemon that do not do anything else for the sake of efficiency. We will be elaborating on some cards when they come up, others we will simply note and move on, and the list is in the description. Let's begin. To start, we have this Dottler with Barrier Attack. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. Fortress EX with Guard Press, 120 damage, and this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks after applying weakness and resistance. But really, ladies and gentlemen, this Pokemon is used for its ability Exploding Energy, which states, once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 5 basic grass energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, and this Pokemon is knocked out. This Pokemon is used to charge up difficult to charge up Pokemon like Wo-Chien EX or Venusaur EX. It's really used also for decks that want to use reversal energy and don't mind giving the opponent 2 prizes, although it hasn't seen any competitive play to my knowledge. Kricketune, Swelling Tune ability. Your grass Pokemon in play except Kricketune get plus 40 HP and you can't use more than one of this ability at a time. Kricketune is fantastic to add on to Pokemon like Leafeon V-Star with a 260 HP, giving it 300 HP. It has the Leaf Guard attack for 180 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. Now it too hasn't seen any competitive play, but you can see the kind of theme and what we're going for here with tank Pokemon. You give the Pokemon as much HP as they can take, within the rules of the game of course, and then they have their attacks like Leaf Guard, and they just basically wait the opponent out. Seedot has Rigidify, takes 30 less damage from attacks. Shuckle, Guard Press, 30 less damage from attacks. Turtwig, this has the ability Solid Shell, which allows it to take 20 less damage from attacks. Now its HP is 80, so you can't use Buddy Buddy Poffin with it, but you can also avoid a one-hit KO from Radiant Greninja, which deals out 90 damage to any 2 Pokemon on the board. So it only takes 70 damage instead of 90. Grotle, its evolved form, takes 20 less damage from attacks on the next turn. Now Venusaur EX is good for Kricketune as well, and its Tranquil Flower ability allows it to heal 60 damage from one Pokemon if it's in the active, and this includes itself. So if you have a Kricketune in play, it has 380, and if you attach what we'll see later in Hero's Cape, you'll give it effectively 480 HP total. That is quite a tank, ladies and gentlemen. It also doesn't hurt that its dangerous Tox Whip attack does 150 and also confuses and poisons your opponent's active Pokemon. Armarouge EX has a base HP of 260, but its Crimson Armor ability gives it effectively 340 HP. Because if this Pokemon has full HP, it takes 80 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So if your opponent has that 280 mark picked out, it's only going to take 200 damage instead of 280. This is often used with something like the Baby Armarouge that allows you to put on fire energy to the active Pokemon from anywhere on the board. Entei's ability Pressure, as long as this Pokemon's in the active, attacks used by your opponent's active Pokemon do 20 less damage. Skeledirge EX has 340 HP, but also has Vitality Song, in which it heals 30 damage from every Pokemon. Torkoal has Guard Press, takes 30 less damage from attacks. Blastoise EX has 330 base HP, has the Solid Shell ability, allowing it to take 30 less damage from attacks, so it effectively has 360 HP. It is quite tanky. Although, again, it too has not seen any competitive play. Hisuian Avalugg, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. Shelter, 30 less damage from attacks. Serena EX. Now, it has 310 HP, but it also has Trop Kick, where it heals 30 damage from itself and recovers from all special conditions. So even though it's only healing 30 from itself, over time, if you are not taking KOs and hitting this Pokemon consistently, it will pretty much heal itself to the point where it will require 2 or 3 or more hits to KO. Wailord, jumbo size. This Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It is a single prizer at 200 HP, so it basically has 230 HP. Pikachu Growl. This Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent next turn. Clefable has Spirit Charm. All of your Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Dragon Pokemon. This has never seen play to my knowledge, although this would be good against something like Giratina V-Star, possibly Noivern EX, although Noivern EX isn't dealing that much damage anyway. Deoxys VMAX, Protective DNA. All of your Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V-Star. This has not seen any competitive play. Fidough, 30 less damage from attacks. Florges, or is it Florges? I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. It has the ability Blooming Garden, which states that your Pokemon have no weakness, but also has the Moonblast ability, which says the your opponent's defending Pokemon does 30 less damage on the next turn. Mesprit, I think I said that correctly. Mental Shroud, if you have Uxie and Azelf in play, your Pokemon have no weakness. Radiant Gardevoir, all of your Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. This was seen some competitive play, although it is escaping me, ladies and gentlemen, what has used it. Whimsicott V, this saw a competitive play right when it was first released, and then that was it. Cotton Guard, during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It also has Fluff Gets in the Way, which states if the defending Pokemon is basic, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Geodude, during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage. Hariyama, Arm Thrust Practice ability. All of your Pokemon take 10 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. Machamp, Crisis Muscles. If your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, this Pokemon gets 150 HP. 300 HP on a Stage 2 single prizer is pretty darn nice, and if you add anything else on it, like a Hero's Cape, it'll have effectively 400 HP. Ursaluna V, this was made famous by Sander Wojciech from the Netherlands with his Penny Loop deck. It has the Hard Code ability, which says this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. With a 230 base HP, it effectively has 260 HP. And Peach Shoulder, the attack Peach Shoulder is completely ignored. Mabostiff EX, Daunt. During your opponent's next turn, attacks used by the defending Pokemon do 50 less damage. Quite interesting from the usual 30. Bastiodon, your Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. Copperajah EX. This Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. Again, 300 base HP, effectively gives it 330. Ferrothorn Exoskeleton, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. Heatran Guard Claw, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks during your opponent's next turn. Iron Treads EX, this is a new one. Ironclad Roll. After doing damage, you may discard all future booster energy capsules from this Pokemon, and if you do, during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 150 less damage. So 120 plus 150 is 370. This Pokemon essentially has 370 damage on a single turn. Clang, Guard Press, 30 less damage from attacks. Kling Clang, Gear Ball, your basic Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. Orthworm, Nutritional Iron. If this Pokemon has 3 or more metal energy attached, it gets plus 100 HP. So that is 230 HP on a single prizer, and this attack, the shoot through ability does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. I thought that said minus 30. Forgive me. Let's ignore it and move on. Revavroom EX, tune-up ability. This Pokemon may have up to 4 Pokemon tools attached to it. If it loses this ability, discard the Pokemon tools from it until only 1 remains. Now that means, ladies and gentlemen, you can take something like the Rigid Band tool, which allows Stage 1 Pokemon to take minus 30 damage. So minus 30 times 4 is minus 120. Wild Drift says that this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. So it's basically minus 50 every turn. So 280 plus 150 is 430 HP. That's a pretty tanky Pokemon. Zamazenta Metal Shield, this Pokemon has any energy attached, takes 30 less damage from attacks. This Pokemon has seen a ton of play with the Lost Zone box in competitive play. Zamazenta VSTAR has seen no competitive play. It has the Shield Star ability, which states that during your turn, you may use this ability, and during your opponent's next turn, all of your Pokemon take 100 less damage from attacks. Hisuian Goodra prevent all damage done to each of your basic Pokemon that has any metal energy attached by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. Then you have Hisuian Goodra VSTAR, which is seeing some competitive play here. Has the Rolling Iron attack for 200 damage, and it states that during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 80 less damage from attacks, effectively giving it 350 HP. And then Moisture Star, during your next turn, you may heal all damage from this Pokemon, so making it even tankier and harder to KO. Stantler Guard Press, minus 30 damage from attacks. Wigglytuff EX, this is interesting. It has the Expanding Body ability. If this Pokemon has any special energy attached, it gets plus 100 HP, effectively making it 350 and very, very tanky, especially if you include a Hero Escape, which I keep mentioning. You'll see that in a second, giving it 450 HP. Snorlax Stall, now we're into the trainers. If this card is in your hand when you're setting up to play, you may put it face down in the active spot, or on your bench as if it were a 120 basic HP colorless Pokemon. You can only do this when you're setting up to play and at no other time, and at any time during your turn, you may discard this card from play. This is only ever seen, ladies and gentlemen, really in control decks, in particular Block Snorlax, and has not seen any competitive play to my knowledge. Full Metal Lab, metal Pokemon, both yours and your opponents take 30 less damage from attacks. Lake Acuity, all Pokemon that have water or fighting energy take 20 less damage from attacks. Fantina has seen absolutely no play. During your opponent's next turn, all of your Pokemon take 120 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. Ancient Booster Energy Capsule sees a ton of play. The ancient Pokemon this card is attached to gets plus 60 HP and cannot be affected by special conditions, and it heals from them as well. Bravery Charm gives a basic Pokemon 50 HP, plus 50 HP. Defiance Vest, if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the Pokemon this card is attached to takes 40 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. This is seen played often in Snorlax blog, as does the Bravery Charm. This is the card I keep mentioning, everybody. It's an A-Spec trainer, the Hero Escape. The Pokemon this card is attached to gets plus 100 HP. No strings attached, just add HP and you're done. It's seeing a lot of play in Pidgeot Control, Block Snorlax as well. Luxurious Cape is the same thing, except that the Pokemon it's attached to cannot have a rule box, and if the Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent gets to take one extra prize card. Pot Helmet, if the Pokemon this card is attached to doesn't have a rule box, it takes 30 less damage from attacks. Protective Goggles, the basic Pokemon this card is attached to has no weakness. Rigid Band, we mentioned this with Revavroom EX. The Stage 1 Pokemon this card is attached to takes 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. I can't emphasize this enough. If it wasn't for the fact that there are other A-Specs like Hero's Cape out there, this card I think is seriously underused and needs to see more play. Rock Chestplate is the same thing, except it applies to any fighting Pokemon, taking 30 less damage from attacks. And last but not least, we have the V-Guard Energy. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides a colorless energy, and the Pokemon this card is attached to takes 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V, though you cannot apply it more than once. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please take care of yourselves, and God bless you.